If you're struggling with long COVID, chronic fatigue, trauma, or any other kind of dysregulation, then I want to introduce a really important concept for recovery. So if you're recovering using emotional processing work, then one of the most important concepts is something called titration. When you start this kind of work, it can be so tempting to white knuckle your way through somatic tracking and constantly be chasing this big release. Maybe you've experienced some big shifts recently. Maybe you were noticing that there's something lying at the root of all of your symptoms and you're just wanting to unearth it. You're wanting to dig, you're wanting to excavate, and you're wanting to find out what that root is, and you're wanting to let it go. And this is so understandable, especially as so many people with these kind of conditions were historically high achievers. They were high performers and they just want an answer. You've dealt with this stupid pain for years and years, and all you want is it to go. And there is this tendency to think that more is always better when it comes to these kind of things, and that I simply need to excavate more, I need to dig more, I need to release more in order for me to get to the next hurdle. And sadly, even though you're so driven to make that change, unfortunately, I don't believe that recovery and especially emotional processing works in this way. So what we need to do instead is introduce something called titration. And titration is all about bringing small doses of emotion, of sensation to the surface to allow them to complete in a very gentle and controlled way so that we're not going to re-traumatize ourselves. And this is exactly why more is not always better with this kind of work. So what we are dealing with is incredibly highly charged, stuck survival energy that's maybe been lodged in our system for many years. And the last thing we want to do is bring this up again in an overwhelming way and have to relive and overwhelm our system. Because all that's going to happen to our system is it becomes flooded, it becomes overwhelmed, you get dissociation, you shut down, you panic, you have all of these horrible symptoms because that is a coping mechanism and a protective mechanism that your body is putting in place. If you take my silent meditation retreat, for example, is a perfect example of this. And I went on this silent meditation retreat. I was experiencing wild emotions coming up, crying just uncontrollably. Whilst I did feel a little bit of relief after these cries, and I did feel a kind of release, everything just came back 10 times worse. And that was because what I was doing essentially was re-traumatizing my system, because all of this emotion and unprocessed survival energy would come up and I would not be able to deal with it. And so my system would become flooded, and all that it would do is create another protective mechanism for it to be trapped back down again. And the dissociation, the fog, the dizziness was just horrendous. So instead of this, we have to do things in bite-sized chunks, and we need to do it in a very gentle and step-by-step fashion as well. So a really common concept from Peter Levine's work is called pendulation, and it is this idea of bringing yourself into the fire, so to speak. So sitting with sensations, bringing something up, and then pulling back. And then we bring ourselves forward into it, and then we come back again. And this is very similar with this idea of titration, where we are gradually working our way into these sensations. We're building our ability to sit with and deal with these kind of emotions and sensations until the point where we are actually able to process and let them complete. Because I know how tempting it can be, and I hear this a lot from people who are looking to start EMDR, and they're just seeking this big release. They're seeking this big kind of jolt, this spasm that is gonna then release and then have all of that fatigue drop off, and it's gonna be wonderful. And I hate to break your bubble that it doesn't work that way. You have to be really careful about building yourself up to a point where you're able to get the most out of that work. And I learned this the hard way, because if you just jump in with this deeper emotional processing work without any of the groundwork, without being able to sit with your body, without having done hand somatics and having that notion of what it feels like to feel your neuromuscular system just release and then come back and then release and come back, not only can you actually not get that much benefit out of it, but you could potentially do yourself damage as well. Because the whole point of this kind of work is we are unearthing things and bringing things to the surface so that we can sit with them and let them naturally complete. And if you don't have that ability to sit with things, if you don't have that ability to notice what is there and allow it to pass through you, then doing any of this deeper processing work is completely pointless. A waste of time, a waste of energy, and a waste of money as well. So all of this to say that this idea of titration is just about ebb and flow. It's all about pushing a little bit, pulling back, and doing this very gently in a variety of different mechanisms. You want to be doing this bodily wise and learning how to deal with unpleasant sensations and then pull back to a safe place within your body, maybe somewhere you feel grounded. You also want to be able to do this memory wise as well. So you maybe your mind wanders and then it pulls back and comes back to a position where you're able to feel comfortable, relaxed. Maybe you can do that with the environment as well. You have grounding objects, all of these kind of things. So we're trying to do things gently. We're trying to do things in a systematic way. And fuck, it's hard. It's so hard. It's so unpleasant. And it's so difficult to stay on that right track. If anyone says that it's easy, then they're lying to you. But I will say that it is some of the most profoundly important work that you can ever do. And when done in the right way, it can be absolutely magical. So I hope that was helpful, guys. And I'll see you in the next one.